important. My name is Arthur Gressick. Art Gressick is fine. For some reason, every time I tell somebody my name is Art Gressick, they say Mark. It's very nice to meet you. I don't know how that's lost in translation, but anyway, I'm one of the engineers for Quest software. We just recently acquired vKernel. I'm also working with that team as well to provide end-to-end solution monitoring for your virtual environment. And today I'm not going to show you any examples of the product itself. We're not going to dig in and go through that. I don't want to put you to sleep. I want you to be awake to drive back home and maybe some drinks later on or anything like that. So what I want to do is simply just go over some slides I've been doing across the country, Salt Lake City. I'm also a VMUG committee member in Cincinnati as well. This has been pretty well received. There's definitely a distinction between marketing and sales and engineering, as you guys know, right? You're always given a lot of great topsoil to turn into virtualization, and you try and make good sunflowers and things like that, but after all, it does smell, right? So if we go and take a look at this slide here, again, this will be PowerPoint, but I hope to make you laugh along the way. So please do whenever the cue pops up. As it is in virtualization today, it's all about the app owner. If they're not happy, they're not getting what they want, their virtual machines are slow, anything like that, obviously the app owners who wrote it or bought it are pretty upset, right? The person who spent millions of dollars in the, to purchase the software, he begins to start drinking on the job, hiding under his desk, disappearing in the middle of the day. He simply doesn't want to hear about it. He paid all this money and it doesn't work. The app owner who's in charge of the logistics for this, of course, they're upset, right? They are talking to the IT manager over there, who then has to wrangle around all of the IT admins, such as the storage admin, the network admin, and so on and so on. And of course, you know how it goes. These guys complain, the app owner's got nothing to do except to go somewhere else and say, well, it's not my fault. Then he goes over to IT manager. IT manager doesn't want to deal with it, so he goes right out and starts yelling at everyone. Then everybody's just sitting there fighting, back and forth, just saying, I don't know what to do, looks good to me. Anybody ever encountered this before? Wow, I'm moving to Indiana, let me tell you. So, what was it like before all this? That's what we were trying to find out. Now again, this is performance and capacity that we're going to be talking about. We're going over all this stuff. In the past, we spent a lot of money on the hardware, a lot of energy, a lot of air conditioning to get it going. But at least the people knew what they were getting, right? You buy one server, you put the software on it. I don't care if it's using all of it or not. I bought it, I paid for it, it's mine. But today, we go out and we create an ESX server and we put a lot on it. We put some applications that use a lot of RAM or a lot of CPU on there, or a lot of disk I/O, right? SQL servers and so on. And this is really kind of the way it goes. You got one that simply wants to be left alone, another one that is hungry on the RAM, and another one at the bottom there, it's basically going to shut the whole thing down on you. The other thing is storage. Again, if you had SATA drives, SAS drives, even if you had a server that was dedicated and went out to your SAN, typically it was being directly connected out to a LAN itself. And you got a dedicated amount of IOPS. Well, today, you got this VM, it's on an ESX host, it's on there with 5 other machines. They could all be tearing up, using up the 10, 20, 30,000 IOPS, even a million IOPS out here. Going on, and you don't know what's going on with these virtual machines, right? It's all in a shared environment. And what's important to remember from there is that, we're doing all of this out in the environment, we're just throwing it to the wind, we're putting it on there, and we have to try and figure out how we're going to get the right amount for the virtual machines themselves, right? The certain amount of IOPS needed. The other one with the network. Right? In the past, we always had a dedicated way to sniff out SNMP traffic. for a specific switch. We knew that that physical copper wire plugged in went to that machine. Today, with all the distributed switches and everything going on, it's pretty tough to track down all of the traffic for that virtual machine. Now, I know things are getting better with some of the new Cisco NetFlow, and I know Juniper's come a long way with their stuff, but that's what we're dealing with here. It's really going and taking a look at that virtual environment, right? It was, again, always easier in the past. The other thing is applications. If anybody remembers, a lot of times too, like a WISE terminal, right? You would sit there and type and it would go directly back to a specific place. We had that application tier that was serving out those desktops that went out straight to a database. It was easy to track. You knew exactly where every single part of that stack was going. In today's world, right, we've got a cell phone that's hitting a web service, and it's going out to a certain database that may be in the cloud on Amazon's web service, and the other half of it might be hosted inside. And so the problem we run into with applications today is data is everywhere. It's behind a firewall, it's being hosted out on a cloud somewhere, it's coming into a different device, it could be all web driven, it may be not. Before, when end users had their own terminals, their own computers going on, we always had to worry about things like viruses that were going on. If the hardware broke, right, there could be a 36-hour turnaround where that person lost their laptop or spilled coffee on it or anything like that, and which went directly to an application, right? If the data got corrupted, there's a lot to it. And again, sort of following that application. Today, users in some companies can bring their own laptops, right? You have this Windows world going on and someone brings an Apple computer in because they just want that, or an iPad. This is the way how we would be able to bring this in. So, this is probably my most favorite slide of all. I get a lot of people talking about this, and really it's the wheel of blame, if you will, going on. And this is where the storage admin goes, don't come to me. I have a $10 million SAN out there today, and if I say I have 100,000 IOPS on this LUN, that's what I have. So it's not my fault. You need to go back over here to the virtual admin because he's the one that's screwing it all up, right? The virtual admin goes, well, I don't know, I'm looking at all these reports and I can't see anything that's going on. You need to go out to the app owner, and so on, and so on, and so on. But as you know more than anything, you're here today, put your name right here. They always come after you one way or the other. Still nothing in Indiana? I swear, relocate. So, the importance of capacity management. And you know, I don't have all the answers here today. I'm just going to admit it, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not a sales guy, I'm a geek. What I am going to do is maybe go over a couple things to help you out with figuring out capacity management, which leads to performance. And I like the very first sentence there, which really is how we're going to be talking about all of these things. And that's the number of objects that can be added to a container that consume resources. So if you will, I know the colors are a little off here, but you can imagine what we're going to do is through each one of these sentences, we're going to replace X, Y, and Z in here in talking about things on an environment. So, for instance, we have VMs on a host that consume CPU, memory, and disk, right? Gosh, even my 10-year-old knows that. It's simply about how much can I stuff or cram into an ESX host. But what we need to look at it is the same way we would look at things like users on a mail store that consume memory and disk on an Exchange server or a Lotus Notes system. The other way to look at it would be the requests per second on a web server, right? Those would consume CPU, network, and memory. Now, I like this because we've experienced this before, right? Has anybody ever gone out as soon as they announced the new iPad and noticed the fact that Apple can't keep their servers running, right? Just too many people that are going at one time directly to a website. It doesn't matter. You are just clogging up the way it goes. Has anybody ever in the state of Indiana ever had to where boot storms, something going on, maybe doing a lot of reports, and you just get that telephone call? There we go, an honest person in the back. That's how good. The number of times I can reboot Ron Oglesby's production servers that his patients can consume before he pummels me. Now, one of the other guys put this in here. I don't know who this guy is, but imagine, if you will, it relates back to people on those physical servers. How many times can I mess with someone's infrastructure before they are going to be really ticked off? Same with virtual machines. How many times do I have a virtual machine that runs slow before they complain to the wrong person and I get called into the principal's office? So if we're looking at this, we want to look at capacity management. What am I doing with my current capacity? Go take a look at everything that's going on in your environment and see where you're at as a business decision. Am I going to be expanding rather soon? Am I going to purchase some new hardware? Anything like that. How quickly am I filling up the capacity itself, right? That's important. We can't figure out where we're going to be at in the future if we don't first know how fast we're filling up what we have. Are we going to grow 10 virtual machines every single day, or every week, or every month? The next thing would be, how much more can I do with my existing capacity? Now, I want to make one thing straight too, is how many people think it's more important to put as many virtual machines on an ESX host as possible versus where do I keep my performance and how many will fit in my environment, right? So it's not about how much you can put in. This is not a clown car, right? This is not how many clowns we can put into a car and just drive it just to be Guinness Book of World Records. It's simply the fact that virtualization allows us to consolidate in order to keep our performance the way it is. When will I run out of capacity? That's the $10 million question. That's what we're going to try and get at today. What happens if I add or remove capacity, right? You got that DR going on to where you lose a host. You got a specific computer manufacturer and the hard drive blows up one day. That's a removal of capacity that's going on. What happens today if I change my growth pattern? Now, that one's a little bit different. What happens when I have large growth of my virtual machines themselves, such as everybody dropping all their iTunes by accident? A Windows administrator changed the home directories to consume all their videos. I immediately start to fill up all of my data stores. What happens if I change how I use my resources? Where is the best place to run my workloads, right? That's changing out the way I put all my virtual machines around with my clusters. So if we take a look at that, we look at utilization itself. That's the point in time, the snapshots of used versus capacity. Again, a lot of this is architecture that's going on here. I'm looking for the specific points here. Application, you cannot look at capacity in a separate silo. Then performance itself is really, again, like I was talking about. It's not about cramming in as many virtual machines as possible. It's making sure that we keep a minimum amount of performance that's going on. There it is. They finally said what I was trying to do. Let's take a look at this. Skip over some of these. Predictions. Man, I'll tell you what, if I could figure out predictions, I would be on a beach somewhere else with all the lotto numbers in the world, right? Prediction is a science that's going on, and everybody out here has some form of that, right? You're out there predicting what you're going to be like in a cluster, when you're going to need new equipment going on. And what we're really doing from here is taking a look at building out our equations in our head, or using a tool that calculates and saying, man, this doesn't make any sense. Why do you say we can fit another 300 virtual machines in this cluster? And if you look at this, I know it might be hard in the back to see. What we're doing is starting out with a baseline across the top, and each one of these is a week. And when we do this, we're looking to see what it was like in our infrastructure today from 2 weeks ago, today, next week, and 2 weeks. And you'll see here in a couple slides what we're trying to do from there. there's two ways that all software today, whether it's Capacity IQ, whether it's vkernel, vFoglight, I can't think of all the other tools that are out there in the market today, but there's basically two different ways we look at it. And that's going to be either the linear trend or a polynomial that goes on. I didn't go to MIT or anything like that. I'll leave it to those experts that sit in the underground basement somewhere. That when we look at these, we either want to look at a curve, but the math that goes into it is really to calculate, based on our past, where we're going from this information all the way up into the sky. This is where things, when we talk about adjustment, and I'm going to go ahead and skip over to this here. Imagine, if you will, took away all that stuff and we'll talk about just these pictures. If I'm looking at my infrastructure today, and let me go back in time, 2 weeks ago, and I basically just had two objects in there. Great, I'm only using 33%. I got plenty of capacity. These guys can go as fast as they want. I got plenty of CPU, RAM, and so on. Last week, we added another virtual machine, and now we're using 50% of everything in our infrastructure. Today we add another one, we're at 66, right? We're growing that pattern throughout there. The next week, so on. So as you can see, every week we're just adding something else to the infrastructure, right? We're building that nice linear expression through there. But what happens is you came out with a little bit of extra money, you bought yourself a new HP, Cisco UCS, and now your math is completely screwed up, right? This capacity planning that you were working on, you knew for the last 3 weeks. But all of a sudden, when you add some new hardware into the equation, what happens is it changes all of our math. We have to readjust, right? So a very evolving infrastructure today is going to be hard to predict. Anything's easy to predict if it's all exactly the same. Here's one where we go down. Now, there's no percentages in here, but if you look at this here, we are looking at an infrastructure where we have plenty of capacity if we lose an entire ESX server, right? So as we're going along in the infrastructure, we do exactly what DR is supposed to do. We rebalance out and move these two machines back in, and we have enough performance to keep everything going. Down below, if we've added too much and we lose something, we can still run everything, but we've lost that performance edge, right? We're back to that clown car where we've stuck too much into it, and we're going to suffer until we can bring back that host. So what we're trying to get at really from here is that when you're looking at your infrastructure and you're growing, whether it's adding equipment, adding virtual machines, this is where we're going to grow. You can see this is where we added the equipment. So we were going along and then all of a sudden things changed. Capacity is not how much you can cram into your host. Again, this is in multiple slides. That is not what we're trying to do with capacity management. Capacity management is more than just applying mathematical calculations. Again, nothing is going to be perfect in your environment. You always have the next bottleneck. No matter what you do, if it's predicted out, right, you got to use this thing up here more than the computer you're using every day. A couple questions to ask. When will I encounter this bottleneck? What will this bottleneck impact, right? If I do lose a host, what's going to happen to my infrastructure today? Do I have 24-hour tech support, 4-hour on-call, right? When do I need to start really caring about this bottleneck? And what will I need to do to alleviate this bottleneck? Do I have budget to purchase more computers? Do I have a way of recovering back extra CPUs in my environment? And they get into these things here. I want to talk about some things. I'll turn off the projector and maybe go into a few things here. But I have a handout for everyone here to fill out their name and email address to be entered into a drawing to win a 2 terabyte iOmega store, something, whatever. 2 big, huge hard disk for you guys if you want to enter. The other thing too is 1 out of every 10 downloads and activations from our website has a "You are a winner," and they really mean it. They give away these things like crazy. You ought to see how many email addresses I have signed up so I can try and win one of these. Boy, no laughing yet. Anyway, if you go to this link here, or if you just enter, you'll be in for a chance to actually win this. And what I want to do is, let's talk a little bit more. Let me ask questions, make this open forum. Let me ask you a question about this. Which one do you think is harder to figure out capacity management or planning? A VDI cluster or a server cluster? VDI. Why would it be that?
So dynamic workloads. I mean, I really know what the differences in end users, and it's not really a static environment.
Yeah, static. Exactly. So you have this Windows team that's always building out these parent images, right? And so you have all this historical data which we need to do projections. And we're going along trying to figure out how many more VDIs I can put into my environment. And if you have non-persistent desktops, that's even worse, right? Every time I use a desktop, I throw it away, right? Or if I have persistent desktops and you get a lot of people on vacation, it's going to look like you got a lot of drones. They're just sitting there not doing anything, right? And so there's a lot of that churn rate that's going on. I haven't seen a tool yet today that does a very good job of actually planning out that VDI implementation itself. The other thing that I find a lot of times is capacity planning of virtual machines themselves. I work today with a lot of customers of more than 5,000 virtual machines, all the way up to 12,000. That's where I get sent around to all the different places. And I see people who've never used a resource pool, ever, and some people who have, gosh, the limit of resource pools in only one cluster. So let me ask, how many people still use resource pools? Not that it's a bad thing. Okay. How many people have more than 3 clusters? Okay. Do you find yourself with those clusters using that as sort of like a resource pool? Maybe to put all of those virtual machines in and then congregate out your CPU?
In cases just for licensing concerns or like tier 1 applications, we might say to get those workloads and resource pools for tiering cases.
Okay. Next question, CPU and memory. How many people go in and take a look at all of their virtual machine environment and see whether or not they've over-provisioned their virtual machines? How many people have done that? And I hope I see everybody's hands up. We have the tool in vkernel that will actually go through your entire environment, scan it head to toe, take a look at performance over a certain amount of time, and come back and give you a recommendation. vFoglight also does that. I figured I'd mention vkernel first since they initiated this. But those products will go through and take a look at your entire environment, take a look at it, see what's actually going on, and pull those up. I don't have access right now to get into a demo, but you can take a look at that. Does anybody have any questions? I know I zipped through that here because, again, I didn't want to bore you with some of the things. I want to make this open. Yes?
You use vkernel to track daily performance and then compile that to the end of a month instead of just going back to the database and seeing all the averages that have been kind of squashed down over time.
Do you want to see the raw data metrics or the rolled up? Or you said over a month.
Right, but keep them daily instead of averaging them out over a week.
There are different ways to roll up the data. I'm not sure quite what the answer is, but it keeps 5-minute intervals for up to a month, and then after a month rolls on, it rolls them off into it. Performance data, yes, we have reports for PDF dashboards that you can pull those up for. They can be individual or cluster-based for each one of those.
So is vkernel just pulling the performance data out of the database for vCenter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and it keeps it separately. So even if you want to bring all the reports or all the data, crunch it together into a dashboard, it doesn't put any extra load on vCenter. It'll do a poll going out to that. vFoglight will also do that as well. Any other questions? I was planning, and I gotta admit, I'm down in the state of Kentucky. I was gonna bring up a whole bunch of bourbon, but I heard transporting that across state lines without at least drinking it was illegal. So I didn't feel proper there. So. No other questions? Well, I can't wait till the VMUG region. I must say, I was up here for the last one. You guys got a great great team and so on. Not just saying that. I know, you know, we tried to get as big of a VMUG regional in Cincinnati. We didn't quite get there, but who knows? Maybe this year, a little bit better. But thanks for having me out.
Thanks.